I am a student of St. Francis Xavier University in Antonosh, NS, Canada. I'm in my third year at this point and have a handful of friends that I hang around so not to get bored with the extremely mundane town. I'm not the biggest on parties and drinking super hard. A shot with the friends once in a while isn't so bad. So there was not much for one to do in this town, since there were only places of interests that aren't in the friends' room to hang out in, or the bars, but it's still a very fun town to wander around at night. One of my friends, I'll call him R, and I have been all over the area. We've walked along the old highway, the new highway, railroad tracks, although the local park, just across campus. It's not something we do every single day, but it's more often than not that we just get bored of hanging around in his apartment. After 3 years, Halo nights tend to lose its luster, so we walk. Last night we were messing around in the park around 1 a.m. I made a suggestion behind our campus. Across the highway, there's an old and large graveyard on the hill called St. Ninian's Cemetery. You can even see it from the Student Union building. Now I have just been there as a child, when my mother wanted to go and find the grave of her uncle, but I barely remembered the experience. So I asked R if he wanted to go and tried to find my great uncle's grave. He said hell yeah, and we were on our way back across town. The journey there took us along the highway, but it was pretty dead at this hour, so we goofed around and walked down and around the middle of the road. We weren't drunk or under any influence, I should add. Otherwise, we probably would have been slipping all the ice that covered the cemetery roads. Despite it being January, the temperature had been a bit higher than the last few days, and there was lots of slush and water sitting on top of the ice for an unfocused mind to slip on. There was still a cold wind though, lots of snow on the ground, so we were bundled up appropriately. As we approached our target destination, R and I both jumped for a moment on how it looked like someone was wandering up the place. We both saw light moving between the graves, but then we realized that it was a combination of night lights on the graves as the reflection of the other light sources got closer, made them appear to move. Regardless, it gave us a quick jump and kept us on our toes. Not long after, we were crossing the road over the cold pavement with some haste to get on foot of the frozen dirt road of the graveyard. There wasn't a gate preventing us from getting in, so as far as we were concerned, it was open season. The sky was cloudy, so the night was fairly bright. Thanks to this, we were able to make the basic layout of the cemetery from the entrance. There was the mausoleum right on the left as you entered, and to the left of what was a beautiful new cemetery shrine, the main road continued up the hill. There were trees began to line the sides as you reached the top. At the top of the hill, a bit to the right, was a massive crucifix. I shook the picture of the cemetery later when we were climbing up the road, but it does not include the shrine or crucifix, and I ain't going back there for another picture. Entering the graveyard at night was a bit nerve-wracking for no particular reason, so we decided just to look at the shrine right quick. It was heavily illuminated under some street lights. As we approached it though, I stopped dead in my tracks and heard this ha-ha in the distance. It was odd laugh, not the natural one, but just disjointed. Almost as if someone was saying the words ha-ha. I was already a little on edge after being fooled by the lights, so this was just shot goosebumps down my back in the instant. I held my hand out to R, gesturing him to stop and listen. There were no other sounds that followed, so I turned to R and asked if he had heard it. I suppose the question was unwarranted. His widened eyes told me everything before he nodded. We scanned out what could see the cemetery, but there were no signs of movement. I asked out loud without shouting if there was anyone else here, but got no answer. To take a moment to catch our wits before making our way out to the cemetery, we stayed next to the shrine for a bit, comforted by the bright light and jokes about how it looked like something could have hidden a passage in a video game. Then once we were ready, we turned on the light features of our phones and proceeded up the road. R fell on his ass instantly, due to the incline and the massive amounts of ice all over the dirt path. I nearly followed suit, so we tried to walk on the side without stepping on any graves. The wind was still gentle, but I brought it with a stink that we thought it was a manure from the many farms in the area. It was a common thing on campus during the spring and fall, random days where the whole campus smelled of cow pies. I could vaguely remember the general location of my great-uncle's grave, enough to know that it wasn't right at the front of the cemetery, but what somewhere was at least on top of the hill. So we aimlessly wandered around, looking for my family name on it on one of the empties. We found a few with the right surname, but the first name and dates didn't match up. R went down for the second time, and I also took a tumble on the road. We laughed quietly and helped each other up before continuing the search. As I was wandering about, I shined the lights down at my feet for a second to see what was safe to step. What I found instead was this bone. After exclaiming in surprise, I called R over to him and have a look. He was so intrigued by the find. It had no meat on it, no blood splatter. It was just stripped clean. It was pretty creepy just to find a bone lying in the middle of the graveyard like that. But the whole area was surrounded by forests, so it was more likely the remains of some feral cat or dog's dinner. Despite all the doubts and explanations I was giving myself, I could feel a pool of dread beginning to fill in my heart. I couldn't tell if R felt the same way, mostly because we were telling dumb stories to each other to distract ourselves. As time wore on, it was getting a bit colder, and R just wanted to head back home soon, since we were both reasonably young adults. I said we should split up and search, since we both had our own light sources, which would make things go faster. R agreed to another 20 minutes of searching, so we split off. Then within a few minutes after left, we were all ready to call it. I found my great-uncle's gravestone. I felt the aura of present surprise upon realizing it. It was the correct one. I had to make sure to picture of it. I began to call out to R to tell him I found it, but we ended up interrupting each other. His shout, however, was much more panicked. I stood up and hurried around the graves, jogged across the ice where he was shouting from. I met up with him halfway, but before I could ask what was going on, he simply grabbed my arm and yanked me wherever I needed to go. It was over right-hand side on the cemetery. I could tell thanks to the approaching crucifix. When we finally stopped, R pointed on the ground for me to look. At first I thought he was just showing me a gravestone in progress, but I noticed the bones scattered about, or the blood-stained snow. Finally the waft of the terrible stench arose and hit me. I was forced to kneel over in disgust. R said that he nearly walked into a hole, but he had caught the strength of the wind's sink, increasing fist. They stopped before he had fallen in. It was an absolute mess. The whole thing. The coffin lid was almost off its hinge, and what parts of it remained of the corpse inside were flopped off into each other. A half-eaten skull stared at me, one side rotted but still intact, the other clean and bone, and by now the fresh of the pile of soil was, we could only assume that whatever it had done this, man or beast, was still nearby. Obviously, R didn't really give a shit anymore about seeing my great-uncle's grave, and I completely understood. We decided to get the hell out of the Dodge and run down the icy road as best we can. As we jogged, I took a look behind us. Paranoid of whatever dug up the grave was following us. I was right to be paranoid, but I wished I never looked. Standing there on the opposite side of the cemetery road, I was able to discern the shadowy movements of a man in loincloth, unfolding himself while lying on top of Jesus, before climbing down on the crucifix. I kept my screams inside and whispered to R, "Fucking run!" I wouldn't let him look behind us as we sprint out of St. Nina's Cemetery and across the double-lane highway to safety.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, Comment and subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload, so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.